for any radio station to take is over 300 are. I'm Amy Goodman. We're talking to best-selling author Barbara Ehrenreich. Her book took the country by storm 10 years ago, called Nickel and Dimed on Not Getting By in America. Now it's been updated and out again. Barbara Ehrenreich, our guest. This figure, Barbara, of the number of Americans on food stamps, almost 1 in 6, almost 15%. The figures from May, people on food stamps were 12% higher than a year earlier, according to the Agriculture Department. 1 in almost 6 Americans. And this applies directly to the people that you met, to the jobs that you took. For example, being a Wal-Mart associate. Talk about that and the woman you wrote about and where she is today.
Yeah, I mean, one of the surprises to me, and it's not a surprise anymore because a lot more research has been done, is how many Walmart employees depend on some kind of government program to supplement their low wages and pathetically inadequate health insurance, which most people can't afford anyway. In fact, when you, I noticed that when I went through the orientation for my job at Walmart, and there was a whole table full of new hires sitting around, you know, that the Walmart people asked to see whether anybody here might be eligible for TANF, for example, temporary assistance to needy families, because they're kind of depending on that government, those government supplements to keep people going. You're not going to do too well on just your Walmart pay. And then at another time, as a Walmart associate, I went to seek food aid. I went to a sort of public/private charitable place that you could get. You could come out with a sack of food. And when the social worker who interviewed me kept getting me mixed up with somebody. You know, I'd tell her that I had a car, and then she'd forget I had a car, and so on. And then she said, you know, it's just we have other people. You know, people are always coming from Walmart. You work at Walmart. I get you mixed up. And that, to me, was a big clue.
So, in other words, I mean, you have Walmart that is famous around the country for fighting unionization, part of the whole movement of corporations that fight tax cuts for the wealthy, for example, is subsidized by the government, is subsidized by the U.S. taxpayers.
Oh, yes. I mean, in many more ways than that. I mean, there are so many subsidies often involved in luring a Walmart to one's area, you know, tax rebates or, you know, things like that. But I was very excited yesterday. I went to the Jobs with Justice conference in Washington, D.C. That's an organization that's devoted to getting workers' rights and improving their standard of living. And there were a number of women, Walmart employees there, or associates as they are called, who are now organizing their own workers' association called Our Walmart. And this is a new thing, and they were dynamic. So things may be about to change a little.
Barbara Ehrenreich, in 2009, you co-authored an article called The Destruction of the Black Middle Class, and you wrote, quote, "For African Americans and to a large extent Latinos, the recession is over. It occurred between 2000 and 2007. What's happening now is a depression," you wrote. Well, we've just reported on a new study of the U.S. Census data by the Pew Research Center that reveals wealth gaps between whites and people of color in the United States have grown to their widest levels since the U.S. government began tracking them a quarter of a century ago. White Americans now have an average 20 times the net worth of African Americans, 18 times that of Latinos. Last month, we spoke about the findings with Roger Harrison, who's the former chief of racial statistics at the Census Bureau.
People use net worth or draw on net worth to invest in their children's education, to help with perhaps a first home, a down payment for a first home, we're entering a period now where Black and Hispanic families, 1/3 of whom have no net worth at all or negative net worth, won't be able to help their children in this way. So this is going to definitely play into the next generation.
Barbara, your thoughts on the report and the state of Black and Latino middle class in this country, if you can even talk about these lines anymore.
Yes, you know, the case of African Americans is very particularly tragic when you recall that they didn't, in the middle of the 20th century, they didn't have a lot of wealth compared to white people because they came from, you know, very underpaid agricultural jobs often in the South. And they couldn't get credit. You know, that was a big problem. You could not get credit because of racist lending policies. Then in the 2000s, suddenly the banks started offering credit, actually targeting African Americans and to a certain extent Latinos much more than white people with their subprime mortgages. And it was, you know, it seemed like a great boon to people who hadn't had credit before because of racism. Surprise, of course, you know, that was a big part of the wipeout of so much of the Black middle class. Plus the fact, which is hard to explain, that Blacks have been much more likely to be laid off in the peak years of the layoffs in the recession, and to be unemployed now 3 times more likely.
Barbara Ehrenreich, talk about some of the other people in nickel and dimed that you've caught up with 10 years later, that you met as you eked out your living as a house cleaner, as a maid, as a Wal-Mart associate. Who'd you find and who didn't you find?
Well, I didn't find most people, and the reason for that is simple. You may leave that person with an address and a phone number, but neither of those is likely to be good in a few months. People, you know, there's a lot of insecurity among low-wage people, a lot of turmoil in terms of their housing situation. Cell phones get cut off, and so on. A couple of people I tracked down. One was not doing that badly. She was still at Wal-Mart. She had advanced to, I think, the huge amount of $10 an hour. But in the meantime, her husband had lost his job, so that, you know, their situation was not at all better. And another woman was piecing together a living, cleaning houses and, you know, cooking for other people, sort of what she called catering. But she was in very bad health, and it was hard for her to do. The thing that is so painful is that there's no help coming for people like that. There's so little help anymore. Food stamps, yes, that's a help, and I am very, I was very pleased that Obama expanded the food stamp program in 08 and 09. He made it easier for many people to get unemployment insurance. Now, of course, it's been the aim of Republicans in the Congress to eliminate all such things and to eliminate Medicaid. There's very little help.
You're extremely critical of President Obama. You've advocated that students not pay back their college loans, among other things. Talk about both.
Well, I didn't come up with that idea, but there is organizing going on among debt-burdened young people who come out of college, you know, with an average of $25,000 in debt and very likely no job or no professional job that's going to help them pay that off. And there's a movement among them for debt forgiveness, to just say, hey, we cannot do this. You know, we can't, we don't have the jobs that allow us to pay these debts off. And, you know, that's kind of exciting. You know, that's what's going on in Chile right now. It has to do with the costs of college tuition. You know, all the demonstrations in Santiago in the last few days have to do with the cost of college. And I think we're going to have to see something like that here, with people just saying, can't do it. We can't do it.
Now, President Obama, your assessment of him, particularly how he's dealing with or not the jobs crisis.
I feel like saying, what President Obama? He forgot about jobs, decided to focus instead on the issue the Republicans chose, which was the debt limit and the deficit. This is tragic. I have no explanation. The only little footnote I would add, though, is that jobs are not enough unless they pay enough for people to live on. And one thing we've seen among American employers, probably employers worldwide, but especially in America recently, is an unquenchable zeal on the part of employers to hold down wages by any means. It's not just preventing unionization. It's so many little tricks that happen at the workplace. It's little tricks like you have to get to work at 7:45 a.m., but the clock doesn't start ticking until 8:15 a.m. or something. That's wage theft, which is a nice way of saying sort of unpaid labor or a kind of slavery even. We have, so many things that are holding people down. I would point out, and these are things that I was not aware of when I finished Nickel and Dimed, or they weren't, very prominent yet, is that employers no longer want to hire unemployed people. Think about that. They don't want to hire people with bad credit ratings. Well, who doesn't have a bad credit rating if they've been unemployed for a little while and having to pay their own health insurance and everything? So it's as if, you try to climb out, you try to hold on, and you just get kicked in the face one way or another and pushed further down.
Barbara Ehrenreich, the Heritage Foundation came out with a study called Air Conditioning, Cable TV, and an Xbox: What is Poverty in the United States Today, by researchers Robert Rector and Rachel Sheffield, who say the U.S. Census Bureau has reported for the past 2 decades that over 30 million Americans are living in poverty. But, they ask, well, what does it really mean to be poor? And you get from the headline, cable TV, air conditioning, etc., what it means to the Heritage Foundation.
Yes, Robert Rector at the Heritage Foundation has had a campaign for many decades now to prove that the poor in America really live in some kind of luxury. I would like to say, yeah, well, some places, boy, you better have air conditioning. In the D.C. area where I live now, you could not have survived very easily this summer, even with occasional cooling centers to go to. But the truth is, here's what's happening. More and more people are having to crowd into smaller spaces to live. This has been going on for a lot of people, for many years, but since the recession, since the financial crisis in 2007, you find more and more families. You can have one family per bedroom and somebody, a couch surfer on the couch in the living room. There's nothing comfortable about that. One of the things that really woke me up to how bad things were was in 2009 when a family member of mine suddenly needed money to pay her mortgage or her home would be taken away. I was able to help, but when I found out the real facts, I was horrified. Her home was a trailer home. Not only that, it's a dilapidated trailer home. She lives in it, a single wide trailer home, along with her daughter and 2 grandchildren. Now, that's getting down to, third world levels of poverty when you crowd that many people into such an inadequate dwelling. Another thing people are doing, give up on medical care. If we have a health care system in the United States, I think its real name is Tylenol. You can't, it's something you have to drop. You can't do it. Food prices are too high. Fuel prices are too high. So you have to give up on those things that seems like you can get through another day without, even if that's your blood pressure medicine.
There are